Shelf.
Nice. Oh, welcome to another episode of the Winefluence podcast. Today we got an awesome guest. His name is Mike from Mike Peace Woodturning. He's a YouTuber. He's got over 30,000 subscribers. I'll show you his YouTube channel real quick. But first of all, I just want to say thanks, Mike, for taking the time to come on here today.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Sure. So let me just give a quick overview of your channels. So you've got 35,000 subscribers here on YouTube. You've got over 5 million views. And if you're listening to that podcast, I'm actually sharing my screen going through his YouTube channel here. As far as videos, I think how many videos did you say you have?
About 500.
So you've got over 500 videos. Some of these 5-6 years ago. So you've been doing this for about 6 years now?
Yes, 2014.
Wow. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. But before we jump into it, can you tell us just a little bit about what your channel is all about, and a little bit of that?
Sure. My channel is about wood turning, which is a specific form of woodworking where you actually have a machine that turns a block of wood, and then you manipulate a tool or a chisel to actually carve away the wood you don't want in the finest in the finished piece. And ultimately, you're turning something generally that winds up being round, such as this. I guess you'd call this a pet urn with a threaded finial, if somebody wanted to, save their cremations. But there's any number of things you can, functional as well as art, that you can turn on a lathe.
Awesome. And so you've been doing this for 5-6 years now. You've gotten over 5 million views on YouTube. Do you mind sharing a story of someone that's contacted you and said, like, hey, like, I got, this value, or I got something out of this, like maybe an unintended consequence or a story that comes to mind?
Well, one, not YouTube related, but I've been turning for about 13 years. There's a publication, American Woodturner, and they have a tip section. I sent in a tip, got paid $35. It was something pretty basic I'd seen somewhere else, and you don't get feedback in print. But there was one fellow that called me up on the telephone, tracked me down, looked up the membership directory, I guess, for the American Association of Woodturners, and he thanked me for that tip, because he said he had had a stroke, and that particular tip made it easier for him to wood turn. And that was just a whole lot more rewarding than $35.
Right, because the guy had to do so much research just to tell you that.
Yeah. You don't get that kind of feedback much on print, but YouTube, when you're reaching out and helping people, you get a lot of positive feedback. And I think where you become a rock star in a very, very tiny niche. If I go to a wood turning event, which they have them periodically, regional events and national events called symposiums, where they'll have presentations, 6 or 7 or 8 a day, and a big vendor, like a big trade show for wood turners with educational benefits. I have people coming up all day long that say, "Oh, you don't know me, but I know you." And they'll just recognize me and stop me and want to thank me for the content that I provide. And it's just really motivating to keep you going when you get that kind of feedback where people say, "This has really helped me."
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so before we jump into your story here, let's do a little bit of advice for YouTubers. So if you were going to meet, like, if someone came to you and was like, "I'm starting a channel now," or "I just recently started a channel," what would be some of your biggest advice to this person?
I think the biggest advice would be pick an area or a niche, if you will, that you're passionate about, because otherwise when the going gets tough and you start losing some enthusiasm or motivation, or you get discouraged, you can keep on going.
Yeah, so focus on something that you are passionate enough about that not only can you get started, but you can keep going for a long time.
Exactly. Even in a small niche like I've got, a wood turning, there's about 15,000 members of I mentioned the American Association of Woodturners that provides this publication. That's just one of the benefits. But there's probably 100,000 lathes sold a year in the United States. So there's a lot of folks out there that don't belong to a club, don't belong to the AAW, that are out there, and they turn to the resources they have available, which winds up being YouTube. So even in that tiny niche, I'm able to drill down, come up with brand new content for a video every week, sometimes 2 videos. And I'm passionate about it. I can always find something to do a project on. I have a list of projects. So the key, I think, is having some passion for what you're doing.
Nice. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we'll dive into that shortly here. First of all, I just want to say, Porya, he said this is going to be an interesting episode with some fire emojis. Thanks, Porya. And Sabi is here. He said, hey, thanks for tuning in. All right. So let's say you meet an established YouTuber, someone that's been on YouTube for a while. They got all the basics down. What are some things that you feel like that you've done differently than the average person that might have given you the edge or helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's learning from other creators, especially content creators that focus in on the niche of YouTube, that provide advice on how you can improve your channel, how you take advantage of the new and changing YouTube features, taking advantage of the YouTube Creator Academy that YouTube provides. I think it's doing your homework and be willing to learn and invest some time and energy, not in just creating videos, but learning how to create videos, how to take advantage of your channel. I'm struck by one friend of mine. He was a house guest. He's a professional woodturner, sells tools. He wanted to get off the road. He started using a YouTube channel to help promote his tools. And I reached out to him and pointed out to him that nowhere on his YouTube channel did he even mention his website where you've got to go to get the tools, which to me was so basic and obvious. And he's been selling tools for a long time. He had some marketing background before he got into professional woodturning, I think maybe as a salesman. And yet what was obvious to me was completely going over his head.
Yeah. So, for some people, it's going to be linking to places. So I know you've got a website where you talk about your speaking opportunities and how you speak at woodturning clubs around the country. So do you link that in your YouTube videos, or?
I mention it occasionally, but most of the folks that are watching my YouTube videos are not in a club, so they're really not a target audience. That doesn't seem to be a good way to reach them. I think the way to reach them is more of my subscribers that are watching that happen to be in a club know that I do that, and they'll reach out and suggest it to their program chair. Hey, why don't we have Mike as one of our demonstrators?
Yeah, nice. And I know that you've got a pretty cool setup. So do you mind just explaining your setup that you have at home briefly?
Yeah, my basic YouTube setup, I started basic, doesn't take a whole lot. I started with a Canon point and shoot and did everything with that using the on-camera microphone. Then I progressed just a few years ago when I started getting an interest in doing club presentations remotely. And we had someone in the woodturning community that was really active in promoting, and his hobby was actually getting people like me started in that area. We spent several hours with the creators walking them through. But my setup basically is I have 3 or 4 cameras, 2 or 3 web cameras, maybe one of them on a laptop, and then a camcorder that has to have a capture card. A lot of people are not aware of some of these little technology pieces, but most cameras, like webcams, get plugged into your laptop with a USB, but a camcorder has an HDMI output, and you don't have an HDMI input on a laptop. So you have to buy an extra device to do that conversion. And a lot of people think, well, if I've got an HDMI plug here, can I plug it in? No, that's to go out to your monitor. So you have to create a conversion. But my setup, I use a mixing software. There's several of them out on the market. I think a lot of gamers use one called OBS, but the one that My guru on teaching this, Alan Zenrick, who has just been tremendous aid in the wood turning community to get people up and about on this stuff. He was encouraging folks to use vMix. So I use vMix, which is basically a mixing software that allows you to take all your inputs and then you select the input you want as an output. And an input could be a microphone, it could be pictures, it could be a video clip, it could be camera 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be a microphone, lots of different inputs. And then but primarily for the visual ones, you select from the ones you see on the screen, what do you want to go in the output window? And that's the one that gets fed to Zoom as a camera.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen you even during the Zoom calls at our meetup that you'll like just, on the Zoom, you'll change what you look like or change the camera, or you've even played videos as your image in the Zoom meeting. So you're using vMix for that.
Yes. Thanks
for sharing.
Yeah, it's a licensed program. I think the basic version, the licensing always changed a little bit, but I think there's a free version that has pretty low resolution. Sometimes I get features mixed up with Zoom, but basically I think they've got a $60 program that allows a limited number of inputs, but everything else is about the same. And then they've got I had to upgrade to a better version when I wanted to have more and more inputs. But it's a one-time licensing fee, unlike a lot of licenses. You pay the fee, and actually they credited me with a lower paid license toward the higher price license.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So thanks for the advice. And let's jump back to some of your why, because some of your early advice for the beginners was, you need to have a powerful enough why to overcome the barriers of starting and to continue going. So let's think back to 5 or 6 years ago when you first started your YouTube channel. Like, what was your world like? Were you sharing in any big ways or any big capacities at that time?
I was a club demonstrator, so I was in the local area, and I did that 3, 4, 5 times a year with local clubs, maybe a club in an adjoining state. I'd written a few magazine articles for publication. They changed editors, and I didn't have for some reason wasn't able to connect as well with the new editor. So I could see that output that area to share was kind of going away for me. So I started turning toward YouTube, and now I still do both. I still publish occasionally. The processes I find very similar to doing a tutorial of a process instruction nature in wood turning is doing a video. You plan, organize, you think about what are the key points you want to get across to the person receiving the information. What is critical, what is not critical that you got to strip out, and having what visuals do you need to use to get across that content. So the process is very similar. They're both rewarding. The difference, I think, is the feedback you get in a YouTube environment is just, like I mentioned earlier, it's just so much, so motivating for people that you reach out and help. Fortunately, I'm in a situation where I'm retired. I retired about 13 years ago. I took up wood turning then, so I've been turning about 13 years. But because of my unique background, I think I was able to pull things together. It made things a lot easier for me to start teaching, demonstrating. I had a lot of instruction background. I had a lot of public speaking, a lot of training background. So it made some of those. I had a strong computer background as a power user, and I was a business analyst before I retired. So a lot of that made it a lot easier for me to make the transition to some of these things.
Yeah. So you've already been like 7-ish years into wood turning. So it's a subject you're already comfortable with. You're comfortable with getting in front of audiences and speaking. So like when you started the YouTube channel, was it more for teaching people from the get-go, or was it to document projects that you were working on or share those with family members and it just sort of blew up from there? Or what was the reasons behind those early episodes?
I just had some topic that I thought would be interesting. I put out there and might be useful to some people. I never give it a great deal of thought other than it was something to share. A monetary reward was certainly not even on the was not visible at all to me. That wasn't a motivator. Wasn't really interested in it. But after I'd been doing it, I think I had maybe 10 videos in the first 15 months that got me to about 1,000 subscribers, and I forget how many watch time hours. But at that point in time, I recognized that there's an opportunity to use Google AdSense and get some revenue as well. And that provided additional stimulus and motivation to do it more often, whereas I had a limited number at the beginning, less than one a month. And then I ramped up quickly to at least one a week.
Okay. So you mostly started out creating content, just thinking, hey, it'd be helpful for other people, or maybe they'd enjoy watching it, kind of thing. And then after you're doing it for about 15 months, you hit that 1,000 subscriber mark and you're like, oh, wow, there's some there's potential here.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've been doing some of the same kind of instruction in front of clubs. So I was familiar with that process of having a topic that you negotiate up front with the club. And generally you do about an hour and a half demonstration. Well, an hour and a half, you got a lot of downtime and reaching for tools and rummaging around a toolbox. So when you do a video, you streamline it down. So it was just a question of converting that to video, but climbing that learning curve of how do you edit. I'd had some hobby camera photography experience when I was much younger that helped me a little bit with process pictures and doing articles. But when I started editing videos, that was a steep learning curve.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what process did you use to upskill yourself on editing videos?
I belonged to a general woodworking club that had meetings every Saturday, and they would, for a lot of their presentations, about an hour and a half presenter on general woodworking, they would have a camera operator. They would show it up on a monitor, and they would also tape it at the same time, and then they'd have someone edit it. And so I volunteered to be part of that editing crew, and I adapted the same software that they were all using, thinking I would be able to get some assistance from folks. But the struggle I had with is most of the software that I've seen and heard, there's not a lot in the way of help files that are that useful. And it was just, you hit a brick wall on something that seems so basic as I want to put a title screen on there, and you don't understand the little nuances of the layering process you have on these streams of content that you've got to edit. That was interesting. But I wound up getting a book after struggling with it for a couple of years. I found online that some expert with this particular editing program had, and that book made all the difference in the world because it had an index, had a topical index, had a table of contents. I could go to the general topic and find out enough that enabled me to kind of break the code on that particular step, whether it's panning and zooming or using a chroma key for green screen or whatever the issue was.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so you started your YouTube channel just to share, teach people, entertain, and then after 15 or so months, you realized, okay, there's some potential here. Now you're 5 or 6 years into this journey. Why would you say you're doing it now? Like what's motivating you today and moving forward for doing this and for sharing these videos?
I think it's the same motivation I had at the beginning, but it's more on steroids because of the feedback that I got, because I am reaching out and helping so many people and getting that feedback. And it's just, my goal is to teach people tips, tricks, techniques and projects to become a better woodturner. And I mean, that's what my channel is all about.
Okay. Yeah. So your why relatively stayed the same. It's just sort of grown in scale because you're getting a massive amount of comments and feedback all the time, and your videos are just getting more views and more attention.
Exactly. I wasn't even familiar with the term influencer, I don't think, until about 3 years ago when I saw Daryl Eves, I forget his channel name, but he was talking about becoming a Amazon influencer. So it was an interesting video, and I looked at that and I thought, an Amazon influencer, and it wasn't that difficult when you achieve that certain level of audience, of subscribers, watch time, what have you, that you can reach out to Amazon and connect and start advertising products and have a shop, so to speak. And if anybody comes in and they click on your link, anything they buy within the next 24 hours, you'll wind up getting a commission. Doesn't have anything to do with wood turning or anything else. I mean, I remember some going down what people bought was a gold watch for their wife. And so one of the videos I did a shout out to, hey, whoever bought that gold watch for your wife, I appreciate that.
Nice. Yeah, I think when I had Sean on here, he was talking about how like a lot of people are buying makeup with his affiliate link, but obviously he's talking about DIY stuff. So
yeah. It's a challenge. I don't make much money on that, mostly because of the kind of things that I can that tie in from Amazon relating to woodwork. Wood turning is pretty limited, pretty small items. I use it more of convenience to help people out, focusing in on where to get something that I'm referring to or using. If I make a tool, I can say, hey, if you want to get this bar of high-speed steel for this tool, you can find it in my link. Whereas otherwise, they never know where to go about finding it, because some of those things you don't even know what to call it to do a search.
Right.
To do a search on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when let's talk back to the beginning then. When you started and like put your first videos out there, what was it like for you? Like, did you have any barriers that you had to overcome? Like, did you feel self-conscious about posting that video publicly, or what was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, I didn't feel self-conscious, I think, because of my background, because I was experienced at demonstrating and talking while I was turning. And I think for a lot of demonstrators in wood turning, that's a real challenge. If they're not a demonstrator, they have to learn how to be a demonstrator, and they have to get comfortable with talking. On what I would tell folks that are interested in demonstrating, much less YouTube, is the best way is just talk all the time while you're turning. You just say, this is what I'm doing this for this reason, this is why I'm not doing that. And you just talk at the same time you're doing, because you've got to fill the air. If someone is watching you, they'll lose concentration. If there's a group sitting in front of you, they'll get in side conversations, because they just watching you do something's not enough. You've got to be able to explain it. And that was clear to me before, but I think on the YouTube videos, what I see is other people in my niche, they go in a completely different direction, and they might have a lot of fast forward. They might have a lot of music. They don't do any talking. They just produce something, and that's okay for their community. That's it works for some people, but for me, I had this need to be able to take more time, drill down a little more detail, and explain what I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. If I have a mistake, don't edit all of it out. Sometimes I put them in blooper videos, but I still edit out some. Otherwise, the video might be too long. And that makes you authentic, and the audience appreciates that. But they seem to appreciate my longer form videos and the time it takes to get into that level of detail. That they don't go to it. They don't have a club. They don't have a wood store nearby that has classes. They're trying to watch a video and learning how to do it. And wood turning is a bit like playing a musical instrument, if you will. Unlike, say, a table saw, where you've got a motor that's turning a blade, and then you move a piece of wood against a fence. There's some knowledge there. I don't want to minimize the knowledge for all those different types of woodworking tasks, but it's completely different where the wood is spinning and you're manipulating a tool, and that is a learned skill of what tool you use, when you use it, how you use it. And that's what these people are trying to learn, because they don't have a clue. And if you do it the wrong way, sometimes bad things happen.
Right. And so you're doing sort of longer form content so that they can see those little nuances that they may not see if you were like, okay, let's crush this video into a small, clip to show the project. You're sort of showing the project and the process. Exactly.
And my rule of thumb, I've experimented with different things, but it seems to me that once the video gets to somewhere, I'd say around 24 minutes, and I can't take out any more content, I've edited it down as closely as I can. I find it's better to break it into two parts, a part one and a part two. And there was a learning curve on that, of how far to go. That it's easier to grab somebody's attention sometimes with a 12-minute video that they think they can digest in that amount of time. But learning how to provide those end card links to part two, don't assume that will always work. You've also got to put it in your show notes to say, hey, if you missed if you missed part one, click here, and you've got to do that on both your videos. They got to point backwards and forwards because they may have come to your video from something on home screen, and they might for whatever reason see the part two, and then they click on that, and then it's like, well, how do they find part one? And you got to make it easy for them.
Yeah, makes sense. And you figured that out through experimentation, like you created content in different ways and saw what worked and what didn't work.
Yep. And from other YouTube creators, but some of them were not as sophisticated on that as others. And every now and then I'd find an idea like that. It's like, oh, that's a great idea. I never thought of that.
Okay. Awesome. So you've got this community now on YouTube that's like consuming your videos. You've got people that know you when you go to these conferences, and you're speaking at a lot of events, especially now that virtual stuff is becoming more accepted.
Yeah.
So like, where are you focused on community right now, or what does your community sort of look like, or how would you explain it?
I'm not sure it's really changed other than that online community with live interactive remote meetings really exploded with the virus. In 2018, I started this early doing these point-to-point Zoom presentations. I think I had 3 presentations. 2019, I think I had 3 presentations, and there were a lot of clubs slow to adapt this kind of technology because most of their viewers wanted to see somebody live in front of them at a meeting with chips flying. Some clubs couldn't always get those people if they're in a small remote location. So this was their opportunity to bring someone in, or if they really wanted to see Mike Peace and there's a number of subscribers in the club, they're not going to get me they couldn't afford to fly me to Alaska or Michigan or what have you. But when the virus, it started picking up early in the year. I think I had, maybe 4 presentations by about mid-March. But after that, it exploded because all the club meetings shut down. They usually meet monthly, and all of a sudden they all had to struggle with how do they keep their club alive, how do they keep their members interested. They all started quickly adopting to these interactive remote meetings, and this year I think I've done about 20.
Oh wow, yeah, that's quite a bit more than the previous years.
I think it'll slow down after the virus, after we get a vaccine. And of course, most of my target audience, they tend to be older. I'd say probably 60% are males, 55 and older, substantial number over 65. So that we got a lot of folks in that I won't say endangered, at high risk, though. Clubs aren't going to get to meet anytime before a virus comes out. You just can't social distance in the meeting venues where they meet and have people be safe or feel safe, and it takes both of it.
Right.
So I think it'll slow down a little bit after the virus, but I think clubs have now ramped up to the idea of now they're beginning to use the same kind of tools themselves to produce their own content because they couldn't always afford to pay somebody month after month. So they're ramping up, and so to some extent the demand is going down a little bit for the remote meetings. There was a big bubble there for about four months. Now it's slowing down.
Okay. Yeah, and so you were retired for roughly 7 years before starting the YouTube channel, and then it's about 15 months or so in the YouTube channel journey that you're like, oh, there's potential here that it could bring some income potentially, and then now you're 6 years into this journey. There's a lot of people out there that create YouTube content, podcasts, and things like that. Do you mind sharing from just like a high level, like your income sources, like
sure,
from doing this?
Yeah, well, there's Google AdSense, but I think when it comes to revenue, it's a question of what is it you're trying to accomplish? What is your goal for your channel? And mine, it was not to make money, but I don't like to leave money on the table. Let's put it that way. So it's not something I was going to ignore if it was low hanging fruit. But a lot of YouTubers are looking at wanting to quit their day job and go into YouTube and get a viral video and think they're going to make $60, $70, $90, $100,000 or more a year. And for very few people, that's not reality. It's an unrealistic goal. But my source, I get a little bit on Google AdSense. I get a little bit on Amazon Influencer, affiliate links, not a great deal. after that, it drops off sharply. I make a little bit of money in wood turning by demonstrating and doing these remote videos where I said we had this pretty good size bubble. I do a little bit on articles, but I'm not publishing that that often. But I file Schedule C. I'm pretty adept at taxes. My background, I've got an undergraduate degree in economics, master's degree in business administration. Worked in human resources for 25 years. Always did my tax returns. Had about 5 courses in counting, including a graduate tax course. And I've been doing taxes with the AARP as a tax volunteer for the last 5 years. But it became, I wasn't making any money until about the time I got a magazine article that paid more than $600. I got a 1099 miscellaneous form, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I've got to deal with this. Whereas before it was pure hobby money. I might sell something here or there, or somebody buy something. I never do. I don't sell much of my work. For a lot of wood turners, they do, but I give stuff away.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, because it's helpful for people to hear like how other influencers are making money or making a living, because they may be able to incorporate some of that into their strategies.
And I think a lot of it is, it's very heavily dependent on what kind of niche you're in. The particular niche I'm in, I think it's very difficult to really do it on YouTube. Other than it does give me some name recognition. It made me attractive as a speaker remotely, because otherwise people wouldn't have known about me. I think it gave me some brand recognition, if you will, compared to, say, world-class turners that if you ask people that are wood turners that are kind of knowledgeable, they'll recognize a lot of names who are wood artists. I'm not a wood artist. I'm more of a craftsman and a trainer.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's opened a lot of opportunities for being seen as an expert. You've gotten you speaking events and things like that.
The other thing, it's not necessarily a big monetary issue. Occasionally I will get some product from a wood turning vendor. Generally, it's a relationship I've established at a wood turning event, and they'll say, "What? I'd like to give you this tool," and it's generally a gentleman's agreement. There's no formal, but there's that understanding that you're going to use it in a video and give it a review or comment on it, and it's going to increase their sale of that tool. But it's a pretty small market, so there's not a lot of money there. So it tends to be some product. Although I did have one opportunity with a tool manufacturer in England that I happened to talk to their international sales rep at an event, and when we got to talking and he realized that I had a YouTube channel and they had this big promotion coming up, he said, "Well, what if I give you these 2 chucks and every set of jaws we have? It's about $2,000 worth of product. Would you do a review?" So that wound up being very nice, because it was a really good product that I'd actually reviewed for a digital magazine article a couple of years earlier. So I was familiar with them. I could talk to them intelligently about their product, say why I liked it, and it made me comfortable for me to say, yes, I feel comfortable about doing that. There's other opportunities I've turned down where I just had a feeling that I'd be into something that I wasn't going to be happy with. I had one opportunity to do that with a fellow YouTuber that used to live locally, on collaborating on doing a review on an expensive product, a large lathe that might have sold for $2,500. And at the end, my club could have gotten that lathe for free. But I was just concerned about it. It was a new product. I'd seen some false starts on products with that company before. And it's like, no, my club doesn't really need it, and I don't want to go down that path. And then, as it turns out, he did it on his own. I think he had a lot of problems with it. He had to send parts back, have them replace parts before he ever got the thing working properly. And I think he kind of regretted getting into it as well.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, you got to believe in products that you stand behind, especially if there's people that are looking to you as the expert. They want your opinion on that. You
get a lot of Chinese manufacturers there that send you some really weird they'll send you emails to offer to give you some of their free product for you to talk about it on a video. That, you know, I did that once, I think, and it was on a LED light, and it's like, no, I'm not going to do that again. It's not. My time is more valuable, and I think my brand is more valuable than to try to promote some particular small product from some unnamed Chinese manufacturer.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I'm fortunate enough that like I know a little bit more about what's going on because you've been consistently coming to the meetup, which I appreciate, the influencer meetup, and you guest spoke there, and we actually deep dove into a lot of the strategies you're using with your channel. But do you mind sharing with us today, like what are you looking forward to? Like, what's the future of My Peace Woodturning? Like what's coming up?
I don't think there's going to be any big changes. It's just continued to product improvement. It's like my old drill sergeant used to say, if you're not fighting, you're filling sandbags. You just continuous improvement of position, trying to refine my processes, try to refine my video skills, try to get faster at some of them so that doesn't take it as long. Knowing when the production quality is good enough that you need to call it quits, because you can, sometimes 90% is more than good enough, and squeezing out that extra 10% takes far too much time. So it's just continuing to do more of the same. My channel will never be huge. There are other folks in my niche that are larger. I've collaborated with some, and I'll continue to do that. I am looking at possibility of some live streams, and I think I'll probably look at doing collaborations with other woodturners on doing that in a format similar to this, two talking heads, but maybe with evolve around a Q&A about a woodturning process or a tool, and then where we could both bat it back and forth and share it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you have some live streams coming up potentially, and then you're just getting faster at things and better cinematography and just like improving across the board.
And continue to understand my audience as it evolves, trying to figure out, well, what content is too basic that offends some of my established longtime viewers versus content that appeals to newer viewers, and trying to just drill down. And I'm beginning to use the community tab a little more often for that, ask poll questions. How long have they been turning? Less than a year, 1 to 3 years, longer than 3 years. Are they in a club? Yes or no? And I'm going to do more polls, I think, on the community tab to get more and more information like that.
Yeah. How have the polls been working out for you so far? Because that's a newer thing that you've been doing,
yeah,
right?
pretty good. I've done 2 of them here recently, about a week apart, and I guess at the time I wasn't really clear how the community tab was reaching out to people, and so I started drilling down on that a little bit. I've used it a few times before to give them a simple communication, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to get a video out Friday, but I'm going to get one out next week and on this topic, or something of that nature. But it's YouTube's attempt to be more of a social media, but I think very few, from at least in my niche, almost nobody takes advantage of it. And it is a way that you can ask questions and get feedback, and they tally it for you. It works. Asking for comments is good. I get a lot of great information on comments, and I try to ask a specific question at the end of some of the videos. And I said, if you have had this experience with this, tell us your results, and please post it in the comments. Or if you're a first-time YouTuber, please post in the comments below to get that interaction. And the community tab is a way to do that, some of that interaction. So I'll continue to work with that. But what I discovered was, especially on mobile, it seems to be more effective, I think, because when they start scrolling down the suggested things, it puts your comment right there in the poll, and all they got to do is click a button, and boom, they've responded to that poll. So that was interesting.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that goes, and hopefully the live streams get going too. That's pretty exciting, especially if there's a lot of these communities out there looking for that live interaction, and they're bringing you in as a guest speaker. Instead of being brought in as a guest speaker when you do these live streams, if you eventually do woodworking live streams, not just the Q&As, you might have like almost like a sort of a virtual community being born out of that. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, that's the part I've been struggling with live streams is, generally speaking, I don't enjoy watching them if I'm trying to get content, because you're watching an hour or 2 hours to get 10 or 15 minutes content. That's my feeling. And when I asked that for feedback on my community, I didn't get a big response, so it's kind of anecdotal. I think I got 10 replies, but 9 of them said they weren't interested. 1 of them said they were. So I kind of put it aside because it kind of meshed with what I was thinking in my particular community and niche. But since then, I've been looking at it with the COVID. More and more people have been going to live streams, and what I see is it is an opportunity, and I think this is the benefit of it, because you got to ask yourself, why do I want to do this? And it does give you an opportunity to interact in a different way with your hardcore subscribers. The attendance is going to be very low compared to watching a video, but they have that opportunity to chat, ask questions, and interact with you in that way. And then when it does go up, I see some of them do get a fair amount of views, not a whole lot, but you still got an opportunity to have it out there on your YouTube channel as another item to watch with some Google AdSense revenue.
Yeah, awesome. Real quick, Jeff said this a little bit earlier, but he said, hey, Jeremy, hey, Mike. So, hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
And then Sabi said, so much gold on this. So thanks for that comment.
Thanks, Sabi.
So knowing that, a lot of the listeners here on this show are people that are either overcoming the barriers to starting sharing, or they are, already sharing, but they're trying to level up. Do you have any last words for these listeners before I open the floor for people to know how to find you?
I think it's nothing more than I've said before. Pick a topic that you're passionate about that's wide enough that you can deal with, and it doesn't have to be too wide for you to really niche down and drill down. Because at the end of the day, you've got to feel comfortable with the community that you're getting, and that you're able to keep going with it. And passion's the only thing that'll carry you there.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that last conversation I had with Justin, he talked about how you need to be able to serve your audience. So, you did this for 7 years before starting the YouTube channel. Now you're another 6 years into that. So you're definitely someone who's able to serve the audience that you've created this niche in.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Well, so if somebody got value from what you shared today and they want to just send you like a private message or leave a comment or reach out to you, like what's the best way someone can contact you or find you? What's your preferred?
Probably the easiest way is to send me an email or comment on a video that you watch. But if you're not interested in wood turning videos, and it's just on something else we've commented, you feel free to send me an email. My contact information is on my website, MikePeaceWoodturning.com.
Great. And I'll make sure that the links to all that are in the description below and on the show notes for this episode. So if you need just to be able to click a link to find his Mike's YouTube channel or his website, it'll be there.
I think one of the advantages of having a branding around your name is it makes it easier when to get something unique that hasn't already been taken. So I changed my YouTube channel name along the way from Mike Peace to Mike Peace Woodturning. When I created my website, the domain name was readily available, Mike Peace Woodturning. My Pinterest boards, Mike Peace Woodturning, so it's all very consistent.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good tip. It's a good way to get like all the aliases on the different platforms.
Yeah.
Cool. So before I let you go, I like to get feedback because I'm trying to grow in my journey and become a better podcast host and help build community better. So you've spoken at the meetup that we run, the weekly influencer meetup, and you've now been a guest on the podcast. Do you have any feedback for me, like either constructive criticism or positive feedback, or just in general any kind of feedback?
The feedback I have is I really appreciate you being able to take the time and energy to do this when there is very little reward in it for you in a monetary sense. And one of the biggest issues I find with volunteer organizations. It's getting people to step up, and you've stepped up, and I really appreciate that. And I know all the other regular participants and the weekly meetup really appreciate that, because you've taken the time to plan it, organize it, and keep it going, and we thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it. And, thank you for taking the time to tune in today. Those who tuned in and for listening. If you're trying to grow your influence, then, the hardest thing is just to get started. Then it's to keep going. Thanks, Abby. He's left a comment saying, "You're too nice. You allow people like me to talk a lot." And we've got a weekly meetup where we get together and just help each other grow influence, push each other to do things that we haven't done before. I know Mike's been considering doing live streams now, potentially as a result of that. And so I'd love to have you join if it's something that's interesting to you. And I also thank TubeBuddy for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. We have a link in the description for TubeBuddy. Just curious, Mike, are you using TubeBuddy?
I do. I was fortunate enough. I've been using it for a little while, and then they had a special deal where you paid a one-time small fee to upgrade to the pro level lifetime. So I jumped on that because it became real obvious that was a bargain.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great platform for optimizing on YouTube and doing SEO research. So, and they're very supportive to the creator community. They sponsored our meetup, and I'm just thankful for that. So I like to make sure that we shout that out. But Mike, thank you so much for sharing today. It's been awesome talking to you, and thank you everyone for listening in. And I hope you got some value from today.